This is Headspace.
Welcome, everybody,
to
Headspace by My Mama Done Told Me.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah. So this is a segment of our this is a segment of our podcast where we have the pleasure of sitting down with experts in various fields. And I use the term expert
very loosely.
Yeah, very loosely. We discuss what it takes to do what they do, why they do it, how it's helped, what's helped them along the way, how they've helped other people along the way. Hopefully get some good conversations out of it. Today, well, let me first start with my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, y'all.
Welcome.
I'm here as always with my sister Lauren and my mom. Hi, guys.
Hey.
And we're here to talk to someone who I've known for a very long time. Well,
Yeah.
I'd say we're probably going on.
Close to 20 years?
Yeah, because let's see, I started getting tattooed when I was 19.
It was pre-Navy.
Pre-Navy,
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Hardcore days.
yeah, probably 20 to 21 years or so. I mean, I'm 39 now, almost 40. So, yeah, anyway.
Still baby.
Yeah, for a long time.
Still my baby.
That's
Yeah,
right.
still mom's baby. Yep. He is, let me tell our listeners and our watchers if they're not looking, he is a world-renowned tattooer.
Whoa.
I mean, you can't say that you're
It's
not.
true.
I just saw all the magazines over there from all over the world.
I
So,
get around, I guess.
He's kind of turning red.
Fake it till you make it, I guess.
yeah, I just saw his mustache curl
Yeah,
up a
and
little bit.
it's-
He works out of and owns the Oak Tattoo in Omaha, Nebraska. He's the Nebraska?
Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska. A painter, a martial artist, a business owner, a collaborator, a world traveler, a husband and a father, a great friend, a great person.
Oh, thank you.
He holds the record being the only man to know what my beehole looks like.
I probably know it better than you do.
You've seen it more than I have. Welcome, my friend, our friend, Dave Koenig.
Thank you
Hey.
much.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm doing well, and I'll let them
Yeah,
answer
we're-
for
we're-
themselves.
Can't complain.
Welcome to Headspace. This is
Thank you
a
much.
new-ish segment for us. Glad
Thank you
to
so much for having me, man.
Yeah, and thank you for having us in your beautiful studio here. I'm really stoked to be able to see this.
Yeah.
We're doing this before I've ever been down here to get tattooed or to watch you tattooed.
It's probably the first time you came to a studio that I'm at where you're not getting hurt. So.
Yeah.
One of the few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So the purpose of this segment, of our podcast, like I said, is to sort of pick your brain. Talk about mindset. So it's called Headspace. We want to get into sort of mindset.
Okay.
And you and I have had several conversations through me getting tattooed by you, or us going and getting something to eat, or whatever we're doing, to get some insight into your mindset and in all the different things that you dabble in. So I know you well enough to say confidently that you spend a lot of time doing your art, right? I said up
Yes,
top
sir.
that you do painting, you do martial arts, you do obviously tattooing. That's your day job, but you've got your hand in a lot of different things, all of which are of some form of art and or business that is associated with
Yes.
your art. So let's talk about the early days of art for you, if you don't mind. I'd like to kind of let present company and whoever's listening know sort of what got you into doing what you do and where you're at today, 30 years after, or 40, 50
Jeez.
years after.
He's ageless.
I'm trying to think that, honestly, when I was young, I guess, I mean, I'm talking like pre-kindergarten, my mom always drew and painted or did art. And so, I think that was one of those things that just kind of stuck with me. I don't quite believe in like just natural, like heretical talent. I believe that it's, there's something when you're at a young age that ignites you, and that, you want to, instead of looking at every time you do bad as a failure, you start to look at it like it's just a learning or a stepping stone, and you just want to keep going. And honestly, art, my mom did it a lot, was drawing. I've told the story a few times, but I remember my older sister, she did a really good drawing, and I bet I was maybe in like, kindergarten, first grade. And I tried to draw, and then I remember we were showing it to our parents, and I remember them just being amazed by what my sister did. And then when my dad looked at what I did, he was just like, well, keep going like this.
Trying.
And that must have been, I feel like that was my ignition. So then when I was young, when that happened, something clicked. And I think, back then I was like, oh yeah, and
Let me
so
show
it was
you.
like, yeah.
I'll show you,
Then,
Dad.
I just started drawing like crazy when I was at that young age. And, and I think that worked as my ignition. And the fact that I was so young, it was just like, putting in that 10,000 hours of doing it, then it became sort of like a talent when I got
10,000
older.
hours, is that something?
10,000 hours is like I think that's kind of what, and it seems to be with anything, how much you have to put or do something to get it where it becomes just a natural act, or it's like you've like
Build
somehow
muscle
like
memory.
your
Right.
brain,
Muscle memory.
like your brain just knows that, and then
Yeah, it
and then what
becomes
happens,
second
it
nature.
becomes like
Yeah.
what you would call a talent.
Sure.
So, I mean, I started young, and so I was drawing like crazy. And then I think that kind of that ignited me. And then I just kept drawing. And then I remember when I was in grade school, I mean, everybody, they go, oh, it's art class, Dave. It was, so I think I was getting some sort of validation when I was
Sure.
young because of it. And so I just kept rolling with it. But I do know, like, then when I got to high school, I definitely took art classes, and, I did a lot of art, but, I kind of lost it. I lost that drive for it when, college, or when I got out of high school, I should say, because I didn't go right to college. But then, then I got into a bit of trouble back then, and then it was kind
Yeah,
of,
I've seen your mugshot.
yeah, it's much prettier than it is now. Yeah, no, and then at that point, it was kind of like it was like go to school, go to jail, or go to military or whatever. So I was like, okay, I go to school. I had to maintain a good grade point average. So I started diving back into art, because I was like, oh, I know I'm good at art, so I'll make sure I'll take those classes along with all my general studies. Yeah, I did that, and then I never did finish college. I was actually really close, but I never did finish because I just got burnt out on it. But I really got into, like, in college, anthropology, all these things like that, and I was just kind of exploring because I didn't know what I really wanted to do. But then got out of there, and then eventually I was interested in tattooing. I actually was interested once when I was like 19 or 20, and then I remember I won't say the specific shop, but I went to a shop. I was trying to get an apprenticeship, and I brought my girlfriend out with me at the time, which was probably a bad idea, because the owner of the shop, I think he wanted to.
He was more interested
She
in
doesn't
her.
draw, and he hired her instead. I'm just like, all right. I think there's some preconceived notions there, but I didn't. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But eventually, I dove back into wanting to tattoo.
Yeah.
And I think in 2000, that was when I was helping Devin and John over at Liquid Courage Tattoos, like, open their shop, and kind of putting the little thing in their ear, like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting into this. And then at that time, I was also doing a lot of like painting or graffiti style painting.
Okay,
I wasn't really any good at it, but I was doing it. And then I remember they had me paint all the doors in the shop, and then I think it was in 2001. So it was after a year later, then they went ahead and accepted me as an apprentice, and that was when I embarked on tattooing, I suppose.
Yeah, and then tattooing sort of morphed into, I mean, you probably arguably paint more or just as much as you tattoo anymore.
Oh, yeah. No, I learned a lot more about art and the methods when I started tattooing, as opposed to when I was in college at UNO. But I don't chalk that up to I'm not saying that college didn't teach me. It's just, I don't think my heart was in it. And so I didn't absorb it like I should have, I mean, I actually kind of kicked myself in the ass for that, because I should have taken advantage of that time to actually let it all soak in. But at the time I was a dipshit. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So it was just like, but once I got into tattooing, then it was like, of course, graffiti artists doing all this. So I was doing all, we all wanted to be like kind of graffiti, new school artist, we're not tattooers. I mean, I remember back then, my mentor, which is funny now because he's all more traditional guy. But I remember back then him telling me, like, we don't use black to shade in tattoos. We're artists. We'll use purple or use this. And it's like, which is funny because, I think we all learned together because at the time he had only tattooed for 4 years.
Right.
So we kind of all grew together and realized what works with tattooing, because in the beginning it was like, we're going to do all this artsy stuff and we were working on it. And then, that's why you always listen to the advice of a tattooer that's been tattooing longer than a decade.
Right.
Because, we would see some of the stuff come back after, 6-7 years and it looked like dog shit. It's just, it just ages so bad in the skin. So, but, going back to the whole question is, that's where a lot of the art, the painting, everything kind of came from. So,
yeah, that's cool. So you have, and again, I'm so sorry if you guys butt in and interrupt me when you have questions.
I'm enthralled. I'm just listening.
Okay, good. So Dave, you have a very unique style, but I know just by looking at it and by talking to you, you take inspiration from a lot of different cultures.
Yes, sir.
And the Japanese culture, American traditional art, Art Nouveau. You did some studies in Native American culture, things like that. Can you tell, how do you take something like that, those pretty specific styles and cultures and things like that, and put them into your own style of art? Like, I know that you and I have talked quite a bit about the things that you've learned from Japanese style art and how you put that into yours. I can look at a piece of yours, whether it's a painting or a tattoo, that is traditionally, quote unquote, American traditional.
Yes, sir.
But there's still very much, you can see influences from those other things, whether it's Art Nouveau, whether it's Japanese. Can you maybe speak to how you sort of
kind of
came
developed
to
that
that?
style and had everything? Well, I mean, all right. So I guess that leaves off to where I was saying about, like, when I started, it was like we wanted to do all this new school or graffiti style stuff, and then you saw how it looked years and years down the road. When I saw how it looked, that's when you realize you're like, oh, there's a reason that the Japanese do it a certain way. There's a reason that the American traditional guys do it a certain way. There's an actual, like, proper method to tattooing that will give it its longevity. So when I started seeing that, I went ahead and started studying and basically doing my research. Unfortunately, it was damn near a decade after I'd been tattooing already. But then I started studying, like, the proper ways to do American traditional tattoos, how important it is, to have black, or how ink works differently as opposed to pigments in the skin. Then it's like, you might as well start studying the Japanese because they've been doing it forever and they are masters of it. And then, of course, I've always been attracted to, like, Art Nouveau, a lot of the Alphonse Mucha, however you pronounce his name. I've always been drawn to that, especially a lot of his commercial art that he was doing.
Bold
outlines, and it translates so well for tattoos. And, also I do remember when I was first tattooing, I guess I've always kind of had a little bit of a style, and I've never known, a lot of people are like, you got a style. I never really saw it, but I do remember my old mentor back then telling me, and I totally understand where he was coming from at the time, because it was in 2001. The tattoo market wasn't so saturated.
Right.
And, the shops would tend to compete with each other a lot more. So I remember he would tell me, he's like, it's probably not good to draw on a style. You should kind of know how to do everything, because otherwise, if you're stylized, you possibly might starve, and I remember I told him, I was like, well, I heard that tattooing is going to be on TV, you know, and,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, I heard that too. And I said, what was it? The first one, I think it was like Miami or
Yeah.
whatever, but,
Cat, what's her face?
Yeah.
yeah, I remember I told him, I was like, well, if tattooing becomes on TV, isn't that going to make the market pretty saturated? You're going to have a lot more tattooers then. And he's like, yeah, probably. And then I remember just being like, well, wouldn't it be better to be the best at one or two things as
Right.
opposed to being mediocre at everything,
Mhm.
you know, because then you're going to have all this competition. It's better to be the best, you know. And then I decided to take it one more step further. And that one more step was like, because I always look at everything I look at is like the luck of leverage, you know, and how can I create leverage out of anything? So I'm putting forth the least possible energy and I'm getting the biggest effect, you know, or biggest outcome. So it's like, you know, the whole Scrooge McDuck, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, instead of trying not to draw on a style, I'm going to hyper focus on it and push it as much as I can. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to educate myself in all the fundamentals in the proper way. I'm going to ride on the shoulders of these giants that have created, like, here's how, you know, Japanese tattoo has been mastered, or here's how, you know, American traditional is, or you know, even some of the tribal or the Polynesian, you know, and so I just I started educating myself on that. And I think it paid off in the end, because I thought, well, if I get good enough at each one of those and I'm following the fundamentals, if I learn the rules before I break the rules, so I know how to break the rules.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing that, now I feel like if you see an American traditional piece by me, you can tell that I did it.
Yes.
If you see a Japanese piece I've done, you can tell I did it.
Right.
If you can tell, and I love flow and things, and that comes with a lot of the background of Art Nouveau, and then honestly,
Martial
the
arts.
Japanese martial art, anything with flow, I just love it. You know, but the Japanese, I mean, it's like, you know, sometimes these tattooers, they study the subject matter so much, and then what they don't realize is they should be studying the backgrounds, because that's the important part, you know. And it's like, yeah, I just, you know, and it paid off, because in the end, I feel like if you get if you want a tattoo, like a Dave style tattoo, then you actually have to come to me.
Right.
However, I've seen a lot of people tattoo my images and stuff like that. It looks so fucking wonky, and I'm like, God, does my stuff look like that? And you know, it's like, I don't get mad when they steal my images and tattoo them. I just get mad when they tattoo it better than I could have.
Oh, yeah. That's
Fuck them.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about some flow, and I actually wanted to get into a little bit of, so you have a history in doing martial arts.
Yes, sir.
So you kind of do various mixed martial arts, but I mean, I know that you and I have done a little bit, very little bit of like Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Yes, sir.
some boxing, some other things. So you've done a lot of that, and a lot of you and I's conversations about that, again, since this is sort of about mindset. So you have to be, so are there principles in martial arts, whether it's flow, balance, that you find have been helpful or applicable in your other arts as well?
Oh yeah, I mean everything. I'd like to say cross market, or you know, like basically everything I do, I like. Oh, combine. I call it combined interest. You know, I try to find something in combined interest. You know, like if I'm doing artwork and I'll draw. You know, it helps me with my anatomy. I'll draw like two people doing jujitsu, and then now I cross market over into like other interest of mine. So you wanna combine interests. So the things that the things I like to hyper focus on are the things that like I lose time without wasting time. Like if I'm drawing or doing a piece of art, time just flies by. If I'm doing jujitsu, all of a sudden it's like it'll be a couple hours, and I'm like, God, it feels like I've just been doing this for a half hour. You know, I just. You know, so therefore, then I always like to combine things, because then it just makes you more interested. But I used to, the hard part was when I first started teaching seminars, people would always ask, like, the big thing was like, well, where did you get style? Or, this and that. I started realizing that, like the way that I paint and do art and everything, I train it almost as if it's like a martial arts, because like in jujitsu or any other martial arts, you learn a movement, or somebody teaches you or shows you the movement. No one can ever just show it to you. And I think we were talking earlier, you have to learn it yourself and apply it. And then what a lot of people do is, they learn, they get taught something, and then they try it. And if it doesn't work, they're like, that's stupid. It doesn't work. But the thing about it is it might work for certain people and then other people. And it takes, and then this foreshadows what we were talking about before with the 10,000 hours. It's just kind of like, you got to put in the time, And so, I mean, with, martial arts, it's like, okay, I don't have this movement. I want to learn this movement. I want to make it that, so I can apply it. And so what you do is you train and you do it over and over, and you dissect it and you keep going, and you get almost, obsessed on it. And so I would do that with art, like I've told this story quite a few times where it's like, when I was really first tattooing, I couldn't draw women like to save my life. I hated drawing women, and then I got obsessed, and then so I would research and find like my favorite, some of my favorite artists, my favorite tattooers, and see like how they would, draw women, and then I would apply some of those fundamentals. Like I didn't want to plagiarize, but I would apply, and then I would do it over and over and over, and I got slightly obsessed, and I put in the reps. And I think that's it. It's just putting in the reps, putting in the time, or put in your hours,
Sure,
The thing about it is it's just like, and martial arts is all about that. And I started, I think when I was 13 years old, I think it was karate, and then, and you lose some matches and different things. And so I just kept going with it.
How do you keep that patience and that focus and not get burned out? Like, I've known you for years, and I feel like every time I've talked to you, you're busy. You're doing something. You're either, like, where do you find that focus? Where do you find that patience to keep doing that? Is it obsession, like you said? Is it
slightly,
passion?
but it's
right?
Yeah.
It's just the absolute realization that it's not what I have, but it's what I'm doing that makes me happy. And I think that's the problem to me. People think of the end result, and they think of like what they're going to have after all this work. And if you're constantly sitting there focusing on the prize, once you get it, then what next? So instead of focusing on that, I realized that I'm happy when I'm doing it. It's
the journey.
It's the process more than it is the product in the end. And I realized that because it's like I mean, going back, what do you do that loses time without wasting time? I mean, you might be playing video games, but then again, video games do have their positive aspects, but the clock flies by, then obviously that's what you should be doing the rest of your life, or somehow figuring out a way to do that for a living. You know? And if you're not happy with what you're doing in the get-go, then figure out a way to use that as a tool to get you to where you're going to be happy doing what you love.
Sure.
I just want to draw. I just want to paint.
Yeah.
I want to spend time with my boy. I love training. I am hitting a point in my life. I mean, I'm 47 years old, so I can't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it definitely hurts, and I'm paying for the repercussions of thinking that I was invincible when I was young. So I'm, and a lot of my injuries now and surgeries that I've gotten, is also because of the consistent training. But I mean, I've had 4 foot surgeries not long ago, and the doctor told me, he's like, you'd be lucky if you're kicking a soccer ball again. And he's like, you shouldn't be kicking pads again. I'm like, I'm still going to do it.
Right.
That's what I love, and that's what makes me happy. So I'm going to do it. But I will be careful about how I do it.
Yeah, I'll try to be a little bit more mindful about how I'm kicking.
Yeah, the martial arts, it's like, I always loved it. And that, I had a bad experience when I was young. So therefore, it was like I was like, then it was another ignition, like the art thing. So then when it ignited something in me where it was like, I have to learn this. And I associated the fact that if I had knowledge, even if it was knowledge about fighting or whatever, then I wouldn't have to live with so much fear, and then I'd have freedom. So it was like, to me, I put that association. And I mean, I used to, like in school, I wasn't super into sports. I mean, I played a few sports, But I was like, well, if I'm getting beat up by all the football players or something, I was like, fuck going and doing the sport. I might as well just learn how to fight, and then they'll stop beating me up anyway. And it worked, I'm not a badass by any means, but I'm just, like these days, I'm definitely not a badass. But, I don't train martial arts now, so I can be a badass or fight or anything. In fact,
Well, it's exercise for one.
it's exercise, and it's the best feeling I have sometimes is like, it's not actually like going to jiu-jitsu or doing jiu-jitsu, but it's right after jiu-jitsu. You're tired, but something in my head, I'm just so clear. You're clear-minded because it's a form of meditation. When you're actually in the application of worrying about that, you can't sit there and think about like what you need to get done with, or I got laundry to do or whatever.
It's a pinpoint focus.
Yeah. And so like martial arts, it's like, even though I had full intentions on getting into it to learn how to fight or protect myself, and now I'm in it for an entirely different reason. It's just because it's meditative, and it helps me focus, and it helps me with every other aspect of my life.
Yeah,
that's why I just don't train as hard. You know? I still train. I'll do it 5 days a week, but it's just like, I'm not going in there with guys who are 25 years old and, twice my size, and they want to, go fisticuffs. And I'm like, I'm no better than that. I'm not going to do that. You know, but
yeah. So I'm interested in what you guys feel, the ladies in the room as well, on
the pretty side.
Right. The camera that will be running the whole time. Yeah. I didn't even turn ours on. I'm just going to have their mouths moving. Yeah.
No one wants to see us anyway.
So that I get very interested. I talked to my therapist a few weeks ago about the benefits of being in the zone, quote unquote. And I realized at that meeting that it's been a really long time since I've been, quote unquote, in the zone, and how healthy that is. The flow, the things that what you mentioned, Dave, of that when you're doing this, you lose track of time in a good way. I'm not talking about work necessarily, unless you love your work, and that happens to be.
And you're lucky.
Yeah. What are you guys like? Where's that for you? Do you get that much?
Yeah.
Are you like,
for sure.
What does yours look like?
I get that way a lot of times when I'm reading, but that kind of makes sense because that's kind of a form of meditation in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm really into tarot, and and when I get into studying that kind of thing and playing with the cards, even if it's just for myself, but if I'm doing it for someone else, oh man, I could be sitting there talking to somebody about a situation, riffing off of the cards for hours. And it's happened before where it's like, oh, I probably need to let you go home and eat dinner or whatever, you know. But that's where I get mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I don't know where I was just reading it too. They were talking about like, some of the keys to happiness, and they were saying like human nature, we're a social creature. And so it's like, the two things they chalked up that will make people happy is knowledge and helping each other.
Yeah.
Which is funny because what you just said was knowledge, reading, and learning about the tarots. And then when you were helping somebody, it puts it together.
Right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
all of it is.
It puts it together,
combined.
and then it's like it gives you the full like sense. And I think that's one of the things that helps me with tattooing. It's like you're doing the art, you're doing this, and then when you see, one of my favorite things is seeing their face when they look at the mirror and they smile, and you're just like, fuck yeah. But I didn't mean to jump all over you.
I've never been in that situation, but I have been sitting, being tattooed, and that right there, when you get into a conversation with your tattoo artist, that's my favorite part. When you kind of get comfortable with your tattoo artist.
100% why I'm as tattooed as I am is because I like hanging out with these guys.
Right.
I appreciate
and like just the conversations that you have, the weird things that come up, like just off the wall things that come up, the banter between the artists or whatever. It's just it's its own world, and that's like
that's it. It's an experience, and that's what's awesome is when you can bring that experience to
and it's very talk therapy-ish because I know a lot of people that just it's kind of like
hairdressers are the same way.
Kind of like your hairdresser
or your nail technician or whatever.
Chris Novak with the big snake back piece that covered his whole body. And he came and hung out, and I tattooed his daughter the other day, and he's just like, man, just fucking put me in the books, and we could just do a small tattoo, or you could touch something up, and we could just hang out. I'll pay you. And I'm like, don't pay me, just swing by the shop and hang out, man. But we just got. I mean, same with like you and I. You see that person so much monthly or bi-monthly, and you get to know each other so well that there's so many of my clients have become like super good friends, and it's great, man. I got a fucking great job.
Yeah.
Mom, where does that come from for you? Where do you get?
What do you think, Jeff?
Well, no, I want to hear you say it. Well, so I'm guessing, and I kind of would mind going into this. The yours is probably going to be partially your art with sewing and quilting and that sort of thing, but also on the other the spiritual side. Yes.
Yes, definitely. When I'm doing scripture study and Bible study and that kind of thing,
that's awesome.
Hours can go by and I don't even realize it. So that is number one. But number two would be the quilting. I do a lot of fiber art.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you've been doing that for decades.
Yeah, that's why I like your bitterness.
Thank you.
That thing is perfect for quilters because people don't want to pay for a quilt.
And you've put in the 10,000 hours.
You put in the 10,000 hours in that, and it's like, come on now.
You've probably done that 4 times over at least.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then also helping the kitties, the animals.
The
I'm
cats,
also a cat person.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
I'm a foster mom for orphan kittens. And
my wife is a cat whisperer.
Yeah.
We got cats too.
Yeah.
She's
That's awesome.
We were just in Greece last year, and her family's out there, and we were out there.
They have a lot of cats in Greece.
Everywhere. They come out from everywhere. It's just like, it's like
almost
an
like
invasion.
against the law to like
Mess with them.
hurt them.
And you'll see them out there, like some of them will have the clipped ears, so you know that they've been fixed or whatever. But the cats are everywhere. And
clipped ears, Jeff.
Clipped is right.
Yeah,
Tipped
not
is wrong.
not
We call it
tipped.
notched.
Tipped.
Tipped.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
And so I find it interesting because my zone is whether I'm drumming, I haven't been as into that lately. I'm struggling finding my zone lately. But when I hear about what you do, Dave, whether it's painting, I've seen your studio at home. Mom, I know a lot of you're in the zone is by yourself. Lauren, whether you're reading, it's by yourself. So we're very social creatures, like you said. So it almost feels like it's a little bit counterintuitive or counterproductive or something, because getting into the zone is very, I don't know, besides playing drums maybe in front of people or whatever, I don't know a lot of times when I've been in the zone with people.
Well, like for mine, for instance, like my quilting stuff is by myself, and so is the spiritual part. But we have retreats, and they go 4 days long with all the other women that do the same thing, and that is.
But
awesome.
are you getting into that meditative sort of zone / flow state in those?
No.
Yeah,
But
and
it's just an offshoot and a
Yeah.
little bit of frosting on the cake.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But like what Dave was saying, like it kind of takes all these different things, and once you have all three, you know, you don't get into that zone so much. Dave probably does, but you probably don't get into that zone so much when you're with the other people. But it plays into it because you've done that work and you've
Right.
learned.
So you're sort
about
of getting the protein and the veggies.
Right.
And
You
the
have to-
starch.
you have to-
It's
a
balancing
food
it all
pyramid.
together.
You have to learn
Actually.
from people, but you have to actually learn it yourself. I mean, it's an individual like thing. I think when you get into that zone, but then you share it with other people or you work with other people. I mean, like I'll go do guest spots or work with a bunch of tattooers. Or go visit somebody, and sometimes it takes me 6 months or so. But there'll be one thing that they were doing, and it clicks like 6 months later. I don't pick up on it. My analytical mind's not picking up on it. It's more like my insightful or my subconscious picks up on it, and then all of a sudden 6 months down the road it clicks. So I think I think you need to have a happy medium or weigh it out. But I think when to find that flow zone, which is funny because in Richmond I have to teach a seminar on flow, but I'm doing composition of flow. But then as I've been writing my seminar for the, flow as composition, I've also been going flow state. And I'm like, well, I can practically do 2 different seminars.
Right.
Like what gets you into flow state? Because to get in that flow state, it's no different than practicing anything. It just takes practice. And once you do it enough and enough, then you can get yourself in that flow state, even if it's around other people, then you can feed off of their energy.
Well, the conscious mind isn't needed as much. It's more of I can do this without really thinking about the fundamentals of it. For me, it's been drumming. So if I can play, and I'm not thinking like right, left, right, left, right, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, counting. I'm just playing because I know where the drums are. I know, I know how to do this. I'm not, I might feel some pain because I'm tired or I'm getting, whatever, but I'm not having to think about, I do this now and do this, and for you, it may be, I don't have to think about, so how does this
I think I usually draw best first thing in the morning.
Not in your own head yet?
First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
It's just,
What'd you say?
I'm always better at first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
too.
Well,
by noon, I'm like, okay,
exactly. Well, I feel like at night, if I sit there and try to draw something at night, I always end up changing the whole thing the next morning.
Yeah.
But at night, I'll think of my composition. So if I'm drawing a back piece or a leg piece, then I know what my subject matter is. I love the hunt of figuring out and learning about the subject matter. And then it's like, okay, now where are my shapes? Now I draw my compositions and I think of my compositions at night. That's because my analytical mind is going. Right. And then when I wake up in the morning, I usually get up in the morning, I'll do a small little workout right away. And then I have while my coffee is being made, and then I come in and then I'll sit and draw and then I can just draw. It's perfect because I think my monkey mind's not turned on.
Yeah.
Because you have the whole day, or as the day progresses and you start to wake up more, all of a sudden your subconscious mind is kicking in and has to take lead, and it's just a survival thing. But in the mornings it's like, boom, you can just flow.
Yeah. Tattoos. That's how I met you. That's, what you do for a living. Tattoos are deeply personal for people. For people who get them, and I know for you as well, just because I know you and I know other tattooers, especially ones who really take their art seriously. And I know you, like I said, you generally feel a pretty personal connection to a lot of the pieces that you've done. Lauren and I just interviewed someone last week who we walked in and like, oh, you've got a Dave Koenig on your arm. And, I moved into my house that I'm in right now, and we met our neighbors, and I'm like, who did that tattoo?
Well, you already know who did that.
Yeah, I already knew who did the tattoo before, big old Dave Koenig on her arm. So talk to me before, and this will kind of be, I think, where we wrap up because we're over time, but that's okay, unless you want to keep going because I don't care. But
whatever you want,
okay.
Man, I'm easy.
Talk to me about what responsibility, and maybe that's sort of a hack question, but do you feel any sort of responsibility or weight in participating in that? Which is so, you've done some tattoos for me where I'm like, it would be really cool to have this, and that's great. You get to make an art piece and I get to wear it. And that's powerful in and of itself. But some of them are very deeply represent something. And I go back and forth in the field. I have plenty of tattoos that are just for the sake of a cool art piece that's fun or funky or whatever. And then others that are very, very, very meaningful to me. Do you feel any weight, or are you just happy to participate in that? Is there
Nah, I don't give a shit about the permanency.
Okay.
No, I'm just
all right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been.
Nah, man. I mean, the thing about it is, I always try to look at, it's going on somebody's body for life, and they're bringing it to the grave. So don't fuck it up. I look at it as like, it's an honor that they want you to mark them permanently. So I'm going to do my best to accommodate that. It's also a collaboration, method, just because like in the beginning, I remember people coming in and you'll get those people who micromanage, and then they're just like, I've after 23 years of tattooing, I've kind of been able to pinpoint like who I should just let go as a client and not deal with, because they might be that they take away that collaboration effect, because you bring it together and And I mean, honestly, like, I look at it this way, you know, and it's funny because, like, you know, I could draw a half sleeve. I could draw it in an hour if I really wanted to, but I instead I usually spend, you know, 3-4 hours working on a drawing just because I want to find something different about it, or what can I do, or how can I, you know, create the composition where the eye flows and does this, and then what do I know about, like, okay, the culture of this or whatever. I think that's kind of fun. It's like a hunt, you know, and then I know that, you know, and the best is like if I'm working on a drawing, and even though I say I do most of my drawing in the mornings, but if I even at night and I'm super excited about a piece and I'm falling in love with the piece, where I'm actually taking a picture of it with my phone, and then at night I'm laying in bed and I'm still looking at it and getting ideas on what to change on it, and I love that. I love that feeling, but I also love, like, you can kind of feel like, then I also have pieces where people come in and they have this, they like the excitement of just like freehanding and just doing it like that. And then, you know, I love freehanding on people too, where it's just like, you know, they go, okay, you know, do this or do whatever here and just draw, and they'll pull out the markers, and then you're having good conversation and you hit this flow state. But sometimes when I'm actually drawing on them, I feel like you get more of a human connection, and you can kind of feel like what they do. I mean, I land right in the middle because you get tattooers, like tattooers out in Japan. You know, my buddy went out and got from out here a few years back, got tattooed by Hori Honda, a buddy of mine who's a Horiyoshi out there. And he, you know, he went there and he was getting I think he was getting a half sleeve and a panel, and you know, Hori Honda picked him up from the airport, had him stay at his house with the family. They spent 3 days getting to know the guy before he tattooed him. He was feeding him, you know, he would eat with the family, and then the last like 3 days they tattooed, you know, and my buddy Marcus Leonard, he does his biomech or whatever. I'm not super into biomech tattoos, but Marcus, I only wish I had a whole limb to give to him. I mean, and he's a phenomenal guy. Like he's a German guy, and you know, I worked with him back in Hancock, Massachusetts, like years and years ago, and we just vibed. And when we first met each other, we were giving each other so much shit from the get-go. It was awesome, you know, and breaking each other's balls. But he does the same thing. Like right now, he's in Canada. He lives out there, but yeah, he'll pick you up from the airport. He'll spend days with you and then talk about the design and then do the whole process, you know. And I think it's awesome. It's awesome a lot of these guys can do this, you know. But then you also have to bridge the gap of, like,
I also have to do this more often.
Like it's like, okay, can I handle all this? And then there's also the one where it's like, you do have some clients that you don't really want in your house and spend all the time with you, you know. And I think it just depends. And I kind of find the happy medium. It's like, you know, I'll have somebody at the get-go and they're really, like, you know, strict on what they want, and I'll work with them, I'll do it. But generally what happens is, you know, I'll work hard on trying to make the design better than what they expect. I always try to give a little more than it's worth, just in hopes, because I feel like that keeps me growing and that keeps them happy. Right. And then if I'm in love with the design and I'm excited, then I'm going to tattoo it, and I'm going to love it the whole way. And you know, and then you build a relationship with them. And some of those people that have had that micromanage at the get-go now just come in and be like, yeah, you know, what are you going to do on me today? You know, I'm like, I don't know. You want to just start drawing? They're like, go for it. You know, and it's like, it's awesome.
Yeah. I remember, you know, when you speak about your friend that went over to Japan and spent days with you know, his artist and getting to know them and everything. I remember that's sort of what, well, that was how you and I got as close as we are, is because I came into the shop, or
I was saying I was looking. It was when I was looking to do large scale pieces, and you were one of my first. Yeah, and I wanted, you know, and I still do that with a lot of people that want, like, you know, a back piece, you know, waist up, or you know, I'm talking like, you know, from back and knees up to top back. Right. I generally like to sit and talk to the person, kind of know them and feel them out.
Well, and I can say from the client's perspective, that is so much more meaningful to have that and go, hey, don't just come to my place of work. Let's go meet at the bar. Yeah. have something to eat and a drink, and let's talk about what you want, what I'd like to do. Let's build that relationship.
Yeah.
And then, and then let's get to this. That's so much more meaningful, I think.
And I mean, you're spending so much time
and money
with somebody.
Right.
But I mean, you got to think about it. Like, how long did your back piece take?
It took us a year to finish.
Yeah. So you're sitting with somebody for 3 hours, 4 hours at a time or whatever for, month after month. And you have to kind of like the person a little bit, I guess.
What,
I don't
Mom?
know, maybe not.
We're tattooing her after this.
No.
Yeah, I was going to have you set that up. Yeah.
Why is tattooing so popular? Why do you think?
Oh.
I mean, what is it? I don't.
I mean, I feel like, of course, with media and everything, it's made it even more popular.
Yeah, it's got
unlike a lot of those fads, like I kept thinking, I'm like, oh, tattooing, my kid probably won't even want them, and tattooings will go out of style. But I don't think they will. I mean, it's been around forever. It will just evolve into different things. But I also think that once you get the tattoo, I think it hits every feel good chemical in your brain because I mean, you got to figure, definite dopamine, it sets off when you're getting the tattoo, just the experience of it. Right. But then you get the permanent factor of it gives you almost like a hit of serotonin, so you feel good. But then you got endorphins because you're dealing with the pain, and definitely adrenaline, and and then oxytocin because you have somebody, you got human touch, so you have the comfort of working with somebody, and so if you think about it, and I've seen a lot of people who are past addicts and things, and then they get tattooed like crazy. Yeah. But it's because it hits all those same chemicals in your brain, and
it does.
It doesn't it kind of become sort of an addiction for some people?
I think it does because we put a lot of heroin in our inks.
No, you know what I'm saying.
No, I think just because of all that, it definitely does, and it becomes, and then because of that too, it's also becoming to a culture of its own. And then in tattooing too, I mean, then there's subcultures in tattooing. You get different types. Yeah. I mean, and then you just kind of love it and you become a part of it. It's like, and I love all the different subcultures. You got different types of shops, different, some of the guys, different subcultures in tattooing don't get along, but some do. But okay, that's just how humans work.
It's definitely such an art thing. I mean, I've seen some really, really beautiful tattoos.
Yeah.
Have you ever really botched one up on anybody? I mean, that would be my fear. It's like, it's permanent.
I don't think there's one I did right on them. No, or you like misspells or different things.
Yeah, like a misspell or anything. Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's, I've had a few misspells. I've had it, because, I'm drawing the word. I'm not spelling it. But the majority of the time, I don't do as much of that now. But I remember back in the day, when I first started, I'd always make them write what they wanted me to draw up in a Post-it note with their handwriting. And I'd staple it. And that saved my ass 3-4 times.
That's how you spelled it.
Yeah, well, oh, look who wrote this, But we were just talking about the damn nautical stars. You remember the nautical stars, man? One panel's black, the other panel's color. Yeah, and it's every other. But for some reason, it messes with your mind on that last panel. For some reason, you feel like it should be this other one. And I remember, getting shit from the guys back in my old studio because I would literally dot the panel that I had to fill in because. And I remember the one time they teased me about it, and then I think it was on my buddy Tony's sister on her foot. I started filling it, and I did the wrong panel, and I was
guess you're getting a full black star.
I look at her, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna make this 3-dimensional because I told her I messed it up, and she's like, okay. I go in, I'm not gonna charge you for it, and then we just start filling it. I had a few of them, man. I had a buddy of mine I had to do, I think it was like a Coors Light can and a Pabst Blue Ribbon can boxers fighting each other.
Oh, that's fun.
And it was my buddy Derek, and I think the Pabst Blue Ribbon, and that's the hard part when it's like a logo or something. Yeah. I started filling the wrong spot, that was supposed to be red and blue. And I remember I was doing it, and then right when I noticed, I was when I realized, I kind of stopped. I looked up at Derek and I see him just smiling, and he noticed, and I was just like, I just looked at him and I was like, when were you going to tell me? He's like, I just saw it and thought it was funny. I was going to let you roll with it. I was like, God,
Glad we have that kind of relationship.
Do you remember your very first tattoo that you drew, that you did on someone?
On someone. My first ones were on myself.
Oh.
Yeah, because you have to it's an unwritten law, tattoo yourself before you tattoo the public. But on a person, it was. It was this little 18-year-old girl, and I remember we knew her boyfriend, and
it wasn't.
I remember. I feel bad saying, but it was like a little butterfly, like right above her pussy, and I mean, it was right there, and I mean, this thing was, like it was tiny, and I just was,
sweating.
Oh my God, and then I just remember I was like, okay, and it was Jonna was there. She was the one that guided me through it, and she did great, man. But you know how salty she can be. She's like, you fucking do this, come on, in her gold tooth, and I was like, okay, Jonna, I was like, I can't mess it up. She's gonna kill me, And I remember I had that girl, and a tattoo that should have took me maybe only like 4 or 5 minutes to do took me like almost an hour. I'm just sweating, and and Jonna's over my shoulder like, don't fuck it up, and I'm just like, But I remember we did it. I did it, and it was done, and it was good, and I felt bad for that little girl, and it was her very first tattoo, and I was like, wow. But I remember it was like, then the next day I had a tattoo, this very pretty woman's like flowers on her butt. And I was like, man, this job's great, But then shortly after that, then I had to do the same thing on guys that were very scary and hideous. And I was like, oh, that's the catch.
This is not all I'm doing.
It was, that was quite the experience. But I mean, it was, Jonna was great about it, man. I give her props, man. She guided me through that. She scared me, but she did it in the right way.
She scares people in the right way, absolutely. Well, Dave, man, I can't thank you enough for having us here and for joining us on this episode. And
I appreciate you.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to put out to the world? Our 4 listeners are listening very intently.
With bated breath.
Yeah.
Geez, that's hard to say. I mean, I guess just...
Where can they find you?
You can find me at dkoenigart.com, DKOENIG art.com. Or you can find me, I think Instagram is Dave Koenig Art.
I'll put it in our show notes.
And then we got the Oak.
Show notes.
I mean, I get out there once in a while and do seminars and tattoo conventions and all that. But, I don't know, just keep moving forward. There's only,
Cool.
That's all I can say. You're either part of the problem, part of the solution, or you're just part of the background. So
fair
be
enough.
the solution, move forward. So besides that, you guys, thank you so much. And you guys are,
so nice
it's awesome to meet you guys and hang with you guys. And you guys are so easy to talk to.
You've actually met my mother before. I don't know if you remember when you were tattooing this piece on me back at LC.
Oh, so it would have been at LC on 75th.
Yeah.
75th and Pacific.
Yep.
I do
No,
think
we were...
it was in Benson.
Yeah, it was...
It was at Sailor's.
Oh, it was at Sailor's Grave. Yeah, Sailor's Grave back in Benson?
No, we went... It was at the 84th and Pacific... or the 80 whatever Pacific.
84th and Center?
It was one of the times that I came back from the military.
Oh, I remember now.
Yeah, because the first one you came back from the military, and I think I outlined it or did something like that. And then I moved to Florida, and then when I came back to Florida, I colored it when I was in town or something like that.
Something like that. Anyway,
Yep,
she
we
came
did
by
meet.
for like
Well, it's good to meet you.
Okay, so this has been an episode of Headspace by My Mama Done Told Me, which is the name of our other podcast. If you want to connect to our family, the best way to do that is email us. You can tell us what you think of Dave, and I'll pass the information on to him. If you but that email address is
mymamadonetoldmepodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, and then we also have a whole bunch of social medias, and we'll also put some of Dave's info, his website, and all that in our
Showy notes.
And then
Can you say show notes?
Show notes?
Yeah, is it easier for you to say shoy notes?
Showy notes?
It feels,
Schwinoids.
yeah, it feels better, doesn't it?
Schwinoids.
Yeah. So we hope you keep your minds open and be kind to each other. Until next time, I'm Jeff. That's Lauren. That's Mom. And this is Dave Koenig.
Thank you much.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys later. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Did you have something else you needed to say?
Love you. Bye.
Yeah, say it. Just freaking tell them.
Love
Tell
you.
me.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
My wife always makes fun of me because in the wintertime I have one of those small ones, but it keeps my head warm. But
The
she's
teeny
like,
weeny beanie.
the teeny weeny beanie. I was like, no, babe, it's a sailor cap. She's like, you're in Nebraska. I'm like, good point. Good point. Good point.
It's a cold day and I'm getting the chills. Wanna make them go away. I need something for reals. Whether I'm in my house or out on the street, I want a hat right now that can bring me the heat. It's a teeny weeny beanie. It's a teeny weeny beanie. It don't cover your ears, cause you still need to hear. It's a teeny weeny beanie.